Hey folks, Russell here, coming from the shop. Let's talk about Jeep suspension and steering woes, problems if you will. On the lift here I've got a late 90s Jeep TJ. Customer stated that it had death wobble, violent death wobble. He towed the vehicle to me and I test drove it. I didn't feel any death wobble. After talking to him for a little while, the way he described it was he would hit a bump and then it would get violent, but under normal driving conditions it was fine. So we got it on the lift, started doing some cursory inspections of it. The first thing I noticed that it had, based on the part number on the springs, it's got and the way the transfer case is lowered, it has black diamond 3-inch lift kit on it, which was done. That part of the kit was done properly, and I'll show some of the things you have to check on that. But it had rough country shocks and a rough country dual stabilizer. So apparently the previous owner was trying to solve the death wobble problem. In my experience, having lifted quite a few of these, a 3-inch lift on a TJ will not cause, in its own right, classic death wobble. Which is where you don't have enough caster in the front steering. Upon further inspection, determined that the drag link tie rod end was just slam wore out. So what was happening is he'd hit a bump and the oscillations would start and you couldn't stop it because it would just bounce around on the drag link. My recommendation to the customer was to replace the shocks, replace all the tie rod ends, replace the drag link itself, because the other end of the drag link and tie rod end at the pitman arm is replaceable. The other end is fixed in part of the drag link. So we're replacing the drag link, replacing the tie rod ends, both sides. We're going to put in an Old Man Emu steering damper and remove that rough country damper. We're going to replace all 4 shocks with Bilstein dampers. And while we're at it, we're going to do a polyurethane transmission mount, and install new Brown Dog motor mounts, which we're still waiting on. So in the meantime, I'm going to lift this vehicle up a little bit and show you some things about lift kits on TJs, and show you what I'm talking about with the tie rod ends. Now, one of the things I really like about the Black Diamond lift kit, and I'm not even sure they're still in business anymore, but I used to install a lot of these, used them myself personally, and one of the things I really liked about them is the lift kit does not come with shocks. That was a separate purchase, so you were capable, it was very easy to buy a 3-inch lift kit and then buy separate Bilstein dampers for your lift. The other thing that was really nice about the Black Diamond lift, it was an all-inclusive lift. So in a TJ suspension, you've got coil springs and then quad trailing arms to locate the axle fore and aft, and then to locate the axle laterally that had the track bar that it was fixed to the frame and it comes to the axle, and that kept the axle from moving this way. When you lift the vehicle, you have to change that fulcrum point, and the Black Diamond kit came with an entire bracket piece to relocate the track bar in the rear. So I always like that. That was clue number 1 to me that this might be a Black Diamond lift. The second clue, obviously, and I'm not going to show it, but there's a part number on this spring, and upon Googling the part number, and it's real easy, you Google the part number with the word spring, and then whoever's lift kit it is will come up. But when I Googled that part number up, it came up with a Black Diamond 3-inch lift. Now, as far as the front end goes, as you can see, it's got the rough country dual stabilizer kit. I don't like that kit. Honestly, I don't like anything Rough Country does except maybe their springs. The springs in their lift kits they're not bad springs. I don't like their dampers or shocks, and I definitely don't like this. But the other thing you've got to do, suspension design in the front is very similar to the rear. you've got twin trailing arms to locate the axle and a track bar. And per the instructions, and I checked this out, per the instructions on the Black Diamond kit, you have to drill a new hole to relocate the front track bar, as opposed to getting an adjustable track bar. So if you're only lifting 3 inches and the instructions tell you, you locate and drill a new hole through here for your track bar. And this one, I've measured it, this one was done correctly. So the lift kit overall, and it also comes with longer sway bar lengths, which is good. So overall, the lift kit initially was installed correctly, but then they went with, I don't know when they put the rough country dampers in. I don't remember when certain companies came into vogue and went out of vogue, so I don't know if this lift kit was installed and they put in rough country shocks, or if they put in something else and then the rough countries came in later. Either way, I will never recommend rough country shocks to anybody. I have found that what happens with them is after they get a few miles on them, they end up with some dead spots in the valving. So if you pulled the shock off and set it on the ground and tried to push it, it would have a dead spot in it where it will just go before it grabs. And I've never had that issue with Bilsteins. In my personal and honest opinion, and I'm not paid by anybody but my customers to work on their stuff, so I would always recommend Bilstein shock absorbers or dampers in anything. So long as I can get Bilsteins for it, I'll run Bilsteins. Never had that kind of problem with them. It's worth the little bit of extra money to buy Bilsteins, in my opinion. The only other possibility that I would recommend for shock absorbers, dampers, would be to run Old Man Emu. And of course their stuff's coming out of, they're out of Australia. I don't think they're making everything in Australia anymore, but their shocks and dampers are also very good. But the same thing, it's you get what you pay for. So back onto this suspension issues and his death wobble, right? So of course up here you've got your drag link, which ties your pitman arm, your steering gear pitman arm, all the way. It goes all the way down to the steering knuckle. It's this ball joint up here, which is just 8 up. So when the vehicle was sitting on the ground and we would turn the steering wheel, it would just knock in here, and that will cause death wobble type vibrations. Upon further inspection, the boots and joints on all the tie rods, they're original. This thing has 200,000 miles on it, so they need to be replaced. So we're going to replace this entire drag link and the tie rod ends on the tie rod, and we'll go from there. Of course, as well as doing the front steering work, we're also going to replace the shock absorbers or dampers. I have already installed the rear dampers into this vehicle. I've still got to do the fronts. Replacing shock absorbers is pretty easy and self-explanatory. So not going to film this portion, but just know that, obviously you've got the 2 bolts at the bottom and then your single bolt at the top. We'll get these replaced and then work on the front steering gear stuff. All right, so I got the old shock out. Gulf Country N3. They're made in Mexico. Of course, a lot of stuff's assembled in Mexico these days, so that doesn't concern me. And I don't know if y'all are going to be able to hear this, but I'm going to try it anyway. Now this damper, it actually feels pretty good going down, but it makes a noise and a little bit of choppiness on its rebound. So on bound, which is compression, it's pretty tight and smooth. But then on the rebound, where it's expanding back out, it's choppy, makes a noise. Let's see if we can hear it. Now, okay, so let's do this. I'll get it up to the mic. Yeah, I don't like that. That's why we're replacing them. So let's put a fresh Bilstein damper in it. I can tell you right now, these weigh less than the rough countries. I don't know what that means, but they weigh less. Just get our strap out. When you're installing Bilsteins, if you check out one of my previous videos, link over here, where I was doing the suspension on a CJ, they went in upside down. Well, not really. So with Bilsteins, you always install the Bilstein so that it's up, right side up readable. So for this particular length of shock for a TJ, they are mounted in the traditional position. But when you're dealing with other applications, they may have them mounted quote unquote upside down, but it's the install instructions per Bilstein is to install them so that the word Bilstein is right side up. So if you've ordered Bilsteins for a vehicle and the bar tab is on the other end or whatever, don't freak out. As long as when you install it, it reads Bilstein, then it's correct. So the fun part is compressing the shock enough to get it into its seat. And I can usually do it by hand. And there it is. TJ and XJ, because the front suspension's identical on both. Shock goes in. You've got the post at the top for your rubber bushings and nut, and then the bar tab, shock eye bar at the bottom, and your bolts go through. And I'm going to put a little oil on these, corrosion prevention. I'm telling how long these shocks will be installed. So I'm going to spray a little of oil on these bolts, just for a little extra corrosion prevention, because you never know how long your shocks are going to be installed, and when the time comes to have to replace them, or you go with a larger lift and need bigger shocks, you want to be able to get the bolts out. Put our bushing at the top, our cap washer, and then start our nut. Now Bilstein comes with a nylock nut on it. And then it's just a matter of tightening everything down and torquing to spec. That's installing a new front shock into a TJ or an XJ. I'm going to shut the camera off. I'll go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll continue with the steering gear. All right, folks, so we already got our front shocks installed, and I've already removed and replaced the drag link, tie rod, and all the ends. I initially, excuse me, I initially was going to try and just replace the tie rod ends on both ends of the tie rod, but they were seized, so we got a complete new tie rod, new moved tie rod ends. The drag link adjuster is new, and obviously a new drag link and a new tie rod end at the pitman arm. So, and of course it's all installed. So now what I've got to do is come through and torque my tie rod bolts. And a lot of people will put an impact on these, and that'll actually destroy the cone inside, because the stud in the ball joint end is cone shaped, and the hole in the steering knuckle has a reverse cone. So what you're supposed to do is seat it in, put it down by hand, and then torque it with the torque wrench. The torque on all of these is 35 foot-pounds. I don't have a foot-pound wrench that goes down that low. Take 35 times 12 is 420 inch-pounds. So we're gonna torque these up. All right, so they're all snugged up. So I'm gonna come back with the torque wrench and torque them, and then I'll zoom in on one and show you kind of the final procedure. A lot of times you'll torque these to 35 foot-pounds, and the cotter pinhole won't line up correctly. Using best maintenance practices, things we used to do in aviation, you go to the low torque side of the setting, which in this case it just says 35. So you go to 35 foot-pounds, and then take it to the next cancellation so that a cotter pin will go through. Okay, so I'm going to bring the camera in and show you one that lined up perfectly, and then I'll show you one that's not quite lined up and what we're going to do to fix that. So as you can see, that one lined up damn near perfect. I can put a cotter key right into that one. And this one here is not quite lined up, so we're gonna turn this just enough to get the cotter key in. All right, now that that's lined up properly, let's demonstrate the proper way to put a cotter key in here. So you run the cotter pin in, you grab one of the tails, and you're going to bend it back, cut the excess, and then cut some of that one off. Once you've got it trimmed, you come in here and lightly tap that down, and then do the same with the short tail. And the cotter pin should not hit the item you're nutted up against, and it should be at least halfway through the bolt on the other side. And that's a properly installed cotter pin. So I'm going to finish getting these lined up, torqued down, cotter keys installed, and then I can take this in for the alignment and then bring it back. We'll do the trans mount, motor mount. All right, so we've got the alignment close enough for government work, and I'll put a link up here to doing a TJ alignment. Pretty much the only thing you can adjust without adjustable control arms is toe, and then set the steering straight. So we've already got that done. It's good enough to at least drive it to a shop, put it on a rack to confirm, and chances are it's going to be good enough. I just wanted to show y'all where and how we're going to do these motor mounts. I'm not going to film the whole thing. I did a previous video on doing motor mounts, the Brown Dog motor mounts. It's a bear. You have to fight it, but the end result is a really good product. But I just wanted to show you kind of one way we get one of the motor mounts out. We actually take it out from the bottom side and take it off the block. So I'm going to flip the camera around here and show y'all some stuff. So as you can see, I've got a transmission jack with a piece of board on it on the oil pan, and then up in there you can see this is the mount on the block, and Brown Dog recommends for the driver's side, so this mount, to remove it off the block instead of trying to fight it up here. So we've got the vehicle supported. I've already got the upper bolt out. I just have to remove the lower nut here, and then we'll take this whole mount assembly off and then assemble the new motor mount to the bracket, put it all back on the block, and then I'll go over to the other side and fight it. And it is a fight. Doing the other side of the motor mount is a serious fight, especially with a transfer case lowering kit in it. So I'm not going to shoot video of all this. We'll do a follow-up at the end with final results, and I got to get to work. All right, now that we've got the whole motor mount assembly off of the block and out of the vehicle, I've got it chucked up in the vise so that I can replace the old rubber mount. And let me go get the tools and the new mount, and we'll get to work on this. So the original mounts are isolators. It's steel sleeve through rubber. And it's covered in a stamped steel. The stamped steel is there for when this tears, to keep it from bouncing out, because it's pinched on the bottom, and then the top bolt goes through. The replacement mount that we use from Brown Dog, ta-da, made in the USA. And there's the part number if y'all want to look it up. And I'll put a link to Brown Dog in the description. Comes with a new stud and nut, and it also comes with a new bolt that goes in the top side. And like I said before, they recommend doing the driver's side to remove the whole mount because it's a fixed point here. On the passenger side, this is a slot to allow for differences in frame size. So they recommend removing the whole assembly from the driver's side, do it, and then work the other side. And that's the side I'm not going to film because it'd take 2 hours. I'm going to have to fight with it because of the transfer case. So we'll get this in. I'm probably going to remove this heat shield. That's one of those things, I don't know why they put it in there. Some vehicles have it, some don't, but all it does is get in the way of putting the mount back in. So we're going to drill that out. Bolt's in really good shape, no corrosion in here, so we're going to shoot some penetrant lubricant on it and put this back together. Now I'm not going to torque this all the way down. I am going to run it down, but I'm going to leave it where it still spins to make it easier to put in. Once it's in and everything's done, then we'll torque these down. So still spins, that's what I want. All right, that's all I'm going to film for this. I'm going to drill these out and then we'll get this reinstalled. All right, folks, bear with me. I've been fighting a head cold all week. So let's recap everything we've done. We have replaced all 4 shock absorbers with Bilstein units. We've replaced the transmission mount. We've replaced all the steering gear, so the drag link, tie rod, and all the tie rod ends. I set the alignment using a tape measure because all you can adjust on the TJ without adjustable arms is a toe. So we set the alignment for 1/8 inch toe in. I've taken the vehicle for a test drive. The shocks work beautifully. Nice, soft, supple ride, as it should have with this Black Diamond lift kit on it. And I think we have solved his death wobble problem. Once again, if you like this content, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon for future notifications. And as always, there's more to follow.